Okay. So tell me about this lawsuit that's going to have a hearing tomorrow.
Well, we filed a lawsuit a week ago, and it was all about the presidential preference election. All right, we have 3 points in our suit that we think are very important, and affidavits filed. One is about voter suppression, and we see that there was about 150,000 people that were suppressed, and we document that very well in our affidavit and show how we came with that number. The second part of our suit is about about what happened in the voter rolls, and people were winning to vote, and all of a sudden they found themselves disenfranchised, okay? And I worked with the Sanders campaign for about 4 days, and they got quite a few of the affidavits, and I have some, and they're going to more include that in their suit, because you know, the Democratic Party and the Sanders campaign and the Hillary have come together. The third part of our suit, which is very important, is the anomaly. Now, I'm not saying election fraud in this election, okay? I'm saying that there are problems that need to be addressed. The vote by mail, Hillary Clinton won by 60%. The precinct vote, which is a smaller part of the overall, Sanders won that by 60%, and then he went on to win the provincials by 63. Usually when you aggregate the numbers, aggregate them together in piles, and you make percentages out of them, they usually mirror each other. This does not mirror. It looks like a flip. I don't think it is. I'm not saying it is, but we shouldn't wonder about our vote. Because of these things and the past history that I've collected over the last 12 years, we are challenging this election, and we're asking for it to be verified. Of course, as you can see right here, the answer we got back from the Secretary of State is that the Secretary of State wholeheartedly supports the efforts to identify problems that occurred in the presidential preference election and solutions to improve all state elections moving forward. But the Secretary must also follow the law, and the legislators has not yet provided a vehicle to challenge a presidential preference election through an election contest. The Secretary would support legislative amendments to remedy the oversight that has occurred. Arizona law excludes the presidential preference election from this particular form of contest. The court should therefore dismiss the case against the Secretary with prejudice against us. Arizona people spent, I don't know, I hear $8 to $10 million on this, and they lined up and they voted. And now we want to know if the election's verifiable, and they're saying, no, it's not verifiable, and it should be dismissed, and citizens do not have a right to bring up a contest. Our Constitution, the Arizona Constitution, does not differentiate between elections. And if you go to the Constitution, which is the base, which is our argument, we do have the right to do this.
Okay. How does this compare to the last presidential election?
Oh my goodness. You know, I did the 2008, and that's the only one that you can really compare to. In the 2008 election, in Maricopa, they had 400 precincts opened up to do this election. In this election, they only had 60. Excuse me. If you try to compare the 2012 election, you'll find that they had 200 precincts, but there was nobody running against President Obama at that time. So there was no need to go vote. And so when it came to this one, wow, how could they do what they did? And that's what we're challenging and taking on. And that differentiates from what the Democratic Party's doing. The Democratic Party is coming in with the HAVA complaints, and you know, we talk about it in this document right here on our site called Election Nightmares. We are addressing issues that they're not, and that's why our suit is important.
Okay. What do you hope the outcome to be? To set forth new standards for future elections, or simply to verify this one?
Oh, it's about the future. It's always is. Elections aren't any good unless they're verifiable. In this suit, I'm not saying that ultimately we will probably start an initiative, and we're going to demand that ballots become a public record. In this state, they're not. The only way you get to look at a ballot, which you really don't even then, is when an election becomes within 1/10 of 1%. And you know, I want you to know that's the worst in the United States. There's no state that has a standard that low. Florida does. They're 0.25%. But they have a remedy at the very end. The remedy is very simple. Ballots are a public record. That's why we know that in the year 2000, any way you add the ballots up, George Bush didn't win. It was the Supreme Court that made him president. If they went ahead and did the hand count before the Supreme Court stopped them, they would have proven that, but they didn't. What happened was people in the media, big companies, they got together and said, hey, we're going to file a records request. It took them a long time. They didn't release the report until 2 days after 9/11, and at that time it went to the back pages of the New York Times, showing that he did not win. But of course, at a time of a crisis, we all rally around the president. All of us did.
So what happens tomorrow?
Tomorrow at 8:45, we have a status hearing, and the judge is going to look at the complaint that was filed asking them to throw this whole thing out because they say that the law can't look at it, and it does nothing for the citizenry to challenge. It's none of their business. That's an argument that the Attorney General is going to wind up making. They've also put us through a lot of hurdles. You know, this morning, I don't understand this, but we had to sue the governor too. And they wanted us to sue the Secretary of State again. And they wanted us to go ahead and sue the attorney of the Secretary of State. And so we sued them too, because that's what they're required to do. I mean, what they're trying to do to citizens like me and my group and people who believe in our cause is make us spend money and bleed. And they're doing a pretty good job at it. All we want to do is verify.
How many people are named in the suit?
Originally, we named all the counties and the Secretary of State, okay, because of the voting equipment. That who was named, and then, of course, the Secretary of State, because she's the one who signed the canvass. And I want you to know, me and the Secretary of State have a relationship. You know, we do legitimately like each other, and she understands what I'm doing, and at least she says she does, and we're testing that relationship.
I think that covers what we need so far. Is there anything I missed that's important?
I think that when you read this, you're going to find a lot of good stuff because this goes into the history of the problems. All I can say is this is not my first rodeo. I've done this about 8 times. I usually do mandamuses. Mandamus is where I use the rules against them because I know the rules better than they are. And I ask a judge, Your Honor, could you make sure that they sign the poll tape? Can you make sure that they actually do the hand count per law rather than trying to go ahead and pull something afterwards? You know, usually they do a lottery pick, but they don't want to commit the results publicly. And then they want to walk around the room and say, oh, that's really good. That matched the result. I helped put that law on the books back in 2006 with other people. Those results are supposed to be publicly committed before the lottery, where a citizen like me or you can say, hey, I got the results, and let's open the bag, let's match the sheet up. That's not happening. It's not happening. We are not verifying our elections properly. And I majorly complain about Maricopa, Pima County, Santa Cruz County, because those are counties that I've worked in. Let's talk quickly about Santa Cruz County. Santa Cruz County was a records request lawsuit that we won. They had to pay my attorney about $38,000 the time we got done. But what was devastating in that lawsuit for them was what we learned is that we found a guy, this one guy, that at one time was, believe it or not, programming as many as 13 of the 15 counties secretly on a 1099. You know what a 1099 is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He was doing about a $2 million per election cycle. He was loading the databases through telephone phone modems. I have this on video. The election director, when asked, gee, isn't there a document that you can give Mr. Brakey telling him who's programming the database? No, she said. No. And he said, why? Because I do it. I program it. And then when I got the Diebold Gems audit log, I found out that she was programming 6 other counties. No, she wasn't. She lied on the stand. She was covering for this guy, okay? I got the email traffic back and forth. My God, she was calling his wife, her mother. And all this stuff was being hidden. And they've never done one hand count down there. Now, I was brought in by a group of concerned citizens in Santa Cruz County saying, Mr. Brakey, will you come in and help us to verify our elections? And that is what my job is. Verify. And trust but verify goes along with it, as Ronald Reagan would say.
All right, perfect.